My name is Clara. I'm 41, and I suppose you could say I cultivate spaces for quiet reflection. Here in Port Blossom, a city perpetually veiled in a soft, silver mist, I've built a life and a business around the idea that beauty and peace are not luxuries, but necessities. It began with a single, neglected rooftop downtown, which I transformed into a thriving urban garden. Now, my company, Viridian Sanctuaries, designs, builds, and manages eco-luxury retreats and botanical spaces across the Pacific Northwest, places where stressed-out souls can come to breathe among ancient ferns and listen to the meditative patter of rain on glass. This life, woven from soil, reclaimed wood, and the patient unfurling of leaves, is a world away from the one I was born into. My family deals in a different kind of green, the crisp, emotionless green of currency. They are accountants, financial advisors, people of numbers and bottom lines. To them, my path was not just unconventional, it was a profound and public failure. For 15 years, they've spoken of my work, when they speak of it at all, with a kind of pitying sigh, as if I were tending a small, sad vegetable patch in my backyard for pocket money. They imagine me in muddy overalls, selling misshapen carrots at a farmer's market. In a way, I let them. It was easier than trying to explain a success they were incapable of measuring. The story I need to tell begins, as so many of my days do, with the rain. It was a Tuesday in early November, the sky a seamless expanse of bruised purple. I was in my office, a quiet room that feels more like a greenhouse, overlooking the central atrium of my flagship property, the Glasswood. Below me, a miniature ecosystem thrived, a forest floor of mosses and fiddlehead ferns, a living wall draped with orchids, and in the center, a 100-year-old Pacific dogwood tree we had painstakingly preserved during construction. Its branches, slick with moisture, reached up towards the vaulted glass ceiling. The gentle, rhythmic hum of the building's climate control system was the only sound, a mechanical heartbeat for the life within. I was nursing a cup of jasmine tea, reviewing architectural plans for a new coastal retreat, when my phone buzzed. It was my mother. I felt the familiar, gentle clenching in my stomach, a reflexive bracing for impact. "Clara, dear," she began, her voice bright with a strange cheerfulness that always preceded a difficult request. "I do hope I'm not interrupting your gardening." "Hello, Mother," I said, my own voice calm. I'd spent years mastering that calm. "I was just looking over some blueprints." "What's on your mind?" "Well, it's about your father's birthday. His 70th. We're planning a little something. Very exclusive, just family and his most important associates. We've booked the most marvelous place. You've probably heard of it? The Glasswood." I looked down through the glass floor of my office at the very space she was talking about. I could see the events team, my team, beginning to set up for the evening, arranging tables with crisp white linens around the base of the dogwood tree. "Yes," I said, a slow, strange warmth spreading through my chest. "I've heard of it. It's terribly expensive, of course," she continued, a note of pride in her voice. "Sophie handled all the arrangements. She has such a knack for these things. She's just been made a senior associate at the firm, you know. We're so proud." Sophie, my younger sister. The golden child. The one who had dutifully followed in our father's footsteps, her life a straight, predictable line of promotions and sensible investments. The family accounting firm, Thompson and Son, now Thompson and Daughter, was her kingdom. "That's wonderful news for Sophie," I said, and I meant it. I had no desire for her life, but I wished her happiness within it. "Yes, well," my mother sighed, the cheerfulness finally dissolving. "Which brings me to the point, Clara. We've been talking, your father and I, and we just don't think it would be a good idea for you to come." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of the rain drumming softly on the roof. I had expected it, in a way. I was always the outlier, the unpresentable variable in their carefully curated family equation. Still, the directness of it was a fresh sting. "I see," I said quietly. "May I ask why?" "Oh, darling, don't be difficult. It's a matter of appearances. The guest list is significant. The CEO of Sterling Bank will be there, the Penningtons from the law group. These are your father's peers. It's a celebration of his life's work, and honestly, your presence would be confusing. People would ask questions." "What kind of questions?" I asked, my curiosity genuine. "Questions about what you do," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We can't very well tell them you're a professional gardener." "And the cost, Clara? The entrees alone are over $300 a plate. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable or out of place." uncomfortable, out of place. In the building I had dreamed up, sketched on napkins, and willed into existence from a forgotten, derelict warehouse district. I thought of the countless sleepless nights, the negotiations with city planners, the arguments with engineers who said my vision for the atrium was impossible. I thought of Chef Antoine, my brilliant, temperamental head chef, and the weeks we had spent personally crafting that $300 entree. I understand, I said, the words feeling like foreign objects in my mouth. Thank you for letting me know. It's for the best, she said, relieved. Sophie is buying Dad a marvelous gift, a new German sedan. We'll tell him you sent your love. She hung up, leaving me in the quiet of my office. The rain seemed to fall harder, blurring the world outside my window. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just stared at the dogwood tree, its branches a complex network of strength and resilience. It had weathered a century of storms. I had weathered only 4 decades, and some days, it felt like more than enough. The hurt was an old, familiar ache. It wasn't the sharp pain of a fresh wound, but the dull, chronic throb of a bone that never set right. For years, I had accepted it as a condition of my choices. I had chosen this path, this quiet, green world, and the price of my peace was my family's approval. I had built invisible walls around my heart, just as I built glass walls for my sanctuaries, to keep the harsh elements out. But this felt different. This wasn't a casual dismissal at a holiday dinner. This was an explicit, formal exclusion from a celebration of my own father, held in a space that was the deepest, most personal expression of who I was. They weren't just shutting me out of a party, they were unknowingly standing in the heart of my creation and declaring me unworthy of entering. The irony was so profound it was almost beautiful. I looked at the gift I had prepared for him, sitting on the corner of my desk. It wasn't a German sedan. It was a terrarium, a miniature, self-sustaining world sealed within a hand-blown glass cloche. Inside, nestled in a bed of moss and river stones, was a single ghost orchid, a notoriously difficult plant that I had spent 3 years cultivating. It was a living sculpture, a testament to patience and dedication. And discreetly etched into the polished walnut base was a small key, accompanied by a set of coordinates. It was the key to a private cabin at my newest, most secluded retreat on the coast, a place of profound silence and beauty. It was a gift of peace, the only thing I truly had to offer him. I picked up the terrarium. It was heavy in my hands. I thought of my father, Arthur, a man of rigid principles and unspoken affections. His disappointment in me had been his own kind of grief. A life in the dirt, he'd called it when I told him I was leaving the firm to study horticulture and landscape architecture. There's no honor in it, Clara. No stability. He wasn't a cruel man, but his love was entangled with his expectations, and I had failed them spectacularly. I ran my thumb over the cool glass. I could stay away. I could send the gift via courier, let them have their party, and maintain the fragile, distant peace we'd established. I could remain in my quiet world, safe behind my walls. Or I could go. Not for them. Not to prove a point or to seek revenge. But for me. For the woman who had poured her soul into the very floorboards they would be dancing on. For the right to stand in a room I had built and not be made to feel like an intruder. It wasn't about demanding their respect anymore. It was about enacting my own. I called my assistant, Elias. He had been with me from the beginning, a retired professor of botany who saw the spark of Viridian sanctuaries when it was just an idea in a young woman's eyes. He was more than an employee. He was my anchor, my confidant, my chosen family. Elias, I said, my voice clearer now, firmer. I'll be attending the Thompson party tonight after all. There was a brief pause. I see, he said, his voice laced with a gentle concern that was worlds away from my mother's. Are you sure, Clara? I'm sure, I said, looking down at the elegant tables being set. Please let the staff know I'll be there. But as a guest. I don't want any special treatment. I just want to be there. Of course, he said. And Clara? Wear the green dress. I smiled. The green dress. A simple, floor-length sheath of deep emerald silk, custom-made for me by a young local designer I was mentoring. It was the color of moss after a rainstorm, the color of my world. It was the color of my strength. The drive to the glasswood that evening was like a journey through my own past. I took the old waterfront road, past the skeletal remains of the cannery district that had once defined Port Blossom's economy. This was the part of the city people used to avoid, a landscape of rust and ruin. And now, at its heart, rose the glasswood. It wasn't a tower that scraped the sky, but a structure that seemed to grow out of the earth. It was a long, low building of reclaimed timber and dark, slate-gray stone. Its most prominent feature the soaring glass atrium that glowed from within like a captured piece of the moon. As I pulled into the private drive, the motion-activated lights illuminated a cascade of water flowing over a stone wall, the sound a gentle shushing that instantly calmed the nerves. This was the first thing I had designed, the transition from the noise of the city to the quiet of the sanctuary. I handed my keys to the valet, a young man named Ben whose tuition I was quietly funding through a company scholarship. He smiled brightly. "Good evening, Ms. Vance. It's good to see you." "You too, Ben. A busy night?" "The Thompson party. Looks like a full house," he said, oblivious to the connection. "Place looks amazing, as always." I thanked him and walked towards the entrance, the cool, damp air clinging to my skin. The small, heavy terrarium was in a custom-made carrier bag, its weight a comforting anchor. With each step on the smooth stone pathway, my resolve solidified. This wasn't a battlefield. It was my home. I was simply coming home. As I reached the grand entrance, two massive doors of polished redwood, they were held open from the inside. My sister, Sophie, stood framed in the doorway, a vision in a stark, angular dress of electric blue that seemed to hum with nervous energy. Her smile was a tight, brittle thing. "Clara," she said, her voice a low, sharp hiss. "I cannot believe you have the audacity." "Hello, Sophie," I said calmly, meeting her gaze. "You look well." "Don't. Just don't," she snapped, stepping forward to block my path. She was flanked by my mother, whose face was a mask of polite horror, her hand clutching a string of pearls at her throat as if to ward off an evil spirit. "Your mother called you," Sophie said. She was perfectly clear. She was, I agreed. "I just decided to come anyway. I have a gift for Dad." I gestured with the bag. Sophie let out a short, incredulous laugh. "A gift? What could you possibly bring? One of your little potted plants?" "Clara, look around." She gestured vaguely at the magnificent lobby behind her. People were milling about, champagne flutes in hand, their voices a low, confident murmur. "The catering for this event costs more than your entire yearly income. This is a place for successful people. People who have made something of their lives." The sting was there, but it was distant now, like the memory of a burn. I looked past her at the lobby I knew so intimately. I saw the reception desk, carved from a single fallen sequoia I'd sourced from a sustainable forest. I saw the series of paintings on the far wall, commissioned from a local artist whose career I had helped launch. I saw the gentle, warm light emanating from fixtures designed to mimic bioluminescent fungi. Every detail was a part of me. "We were very specific," my mother chimed in, her voice trembling slightly. "We wanted to protect you from embarrassment. And to protect yourselves from the embarrassment of me," I finished for her, my voice soft but unwavering. Just then, Sophie's fiancé, Mark, appeared at her side. He was a handsome man in a well-tailored suit, his face flushed with the importance of the evening. He worked in commercial real estate, a piranha in a small pond. "What's the holdup?" he asked, then he saw me. His smile faltered. "Oh, Clara. Didn't expect to see you here." "So I gather," I replied. "Mark just closed the biggest deal of his career," Sophie announced, grabbing his arm as if he were a trophy. "He's leasing the top 3 floors of the new Sterling Tower to a tech firm. We're celebrating that tonight, too." I knew about that deal. Mark's firm was a tenant in a building Viridian had acquired 6 months ago. My property management division had flagged his aggressive and, frankly, borderline unethical negotiation tactics. The Sterling Tower deal he was so proud of was about to fall through, as the tech firm was a shell corporation under investigation for fraud, a fact my due diligence team had uncovered last week. I had the report sitting in my inbox. "That's impressive," I said, looking at Mark. His eyes flickered away from mine. "Look," Sophie said, her patience clearly gone. "This is ridiculous. You are not coming in. It's a private event. The entire atrium floor is reserved." "My floor," I murmured, almost to myself. "What was that?" "Nothing," I said. "I'd just like to wish my father a happy birthday and give him his gift." "Give it to me." "I'll make sure he gets it," Sophie said, reaching for the bag. I held it back. "No. I'd like to give it to him myself." "Absolutely not," my mother said, her voice rising. "You are making a scene, Clara. What will people think?" As if on cue, Mr. and Mrs. Pennington, old family friends and partners at a prestigious law firm, walked towards the entrance. "Helen. Arthur." Mr. Pennington boomed. "What a place. Simply magnificent. We were just saying, we've never seen anything like it." It's something, isn't it? My mother said, turning on a dazzling smile, completely ignoring me as if I were a piece of shrubbery. Sophie arranged everything. Mrs. Pennington's eyes fell on me, a flicker of vague recognition in them. Clara? Is that you, dear? My, you're looking healthy. It was the word one used for farm animals and children. She took in my simple silk dress, and then her eyes slid to Sophie's garish designer piece, a clear judgment passing across her face. I simply smiled. It's lovely to see you both. They moved past us into the lobby, and my family turned back to me, their expressions hardened. This has gone on long enough, Sophie hissed. Security. I almost laughed. My security team? She was calling my security team on me. But before she could raise her voice, a calm, familiar presence appeared at my side. It was Elias. He was dressed in a simple, elegant dark suit, his white hair impeccably styled. He held a tablet in his hand. He looked at my mother and sister, his expression one of polite, unassailable authority. Is there a problem here, Mrs. Thompson? Miss Thompson, he asked, his voice quiet but carrying the unmistakable weight of command. Yes, there is, Sophie said, pointing a finger at me. This woman is trying to crash a private party. Please have her removed. Elias's gaze shifted to me, and for a fraction of a second, I saw a deep well of warmth and support in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by professional deference. Ma'am, he said to me. I apologize for the disturbance at the door. Your table is ready. Chef Antoine asked me to confirm whether you'd like to begin with the wild mushroom consommé or the chilled cucumber and mint soup. The silence that fell was absolute. It was so profound I could hear the faint whisper of the waterfall behind me and the frantic beating of my own heart. Sophie's perfectly painted mouth fell open. My mother stared at Elias, then at me, her face a canvas of pure, uncomprehending shock. Mark took a half step back, as if creating distance from a sudden explosion. I don't understand, my mother stammered, her hand going to her chest. Who are you? My name is Elias Vance, he said gently. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Viridian Sanctuaries. And this, he made a subtle gesture that encompassed the entire, breathtaking building, is Ms. Clara Vance's establishment. She is the founder, CEO, and visionary behind the glass, wood, and every other Viridian property. Sophie made a small, choking sound. That's impossible. She's a gardener. She grows vegetables. A common misconception, Elias said smoothly, his eyes twinkling. While Ms. Vance is indeed a gifted horticulturalist, her primary work for the past 15 years has been building one of the most successful and innovative eco-hospitality companies in the country. The glass wood is her signature achievement. He paused, letting the information settle like fine dust. So, the consommé, Ms. Vance? The consommé sounds perfect, Elias, I said, my voice steady. Thank you. I turned my gaze to my family. They were frozen, statues carved from ice. Shall we? I asked, stepping over the threshold into the warm, glowing light of my lobby. You've reserved the atrium floor, I believe. My floor. They followed me in a stunned, shuffling silence. It was as if the world had tilted on its axis, and they were struggling to find their footing. Every staff member we passed, the concierge, the servers, the hosts, greeted me by name. Good evening, Ms. Vance. Welcome, Ms. Vance. The lighting is set to your preference, Ms. Vance. Each greeting was a small, quiet hammer blow, shattering the foundations of the reality they had constructed for me. We arrived at the entrance to the atrium, where the party was in full swing. The sound of a string quartet drifted from a discreet corner, weaving through the gentle murmur of conversation. The air smelled of damp earth, night-blooming jasmine, and expensive perfume. My father, holding court at the center table, saw us approach. His face lit up when he saw my mother and sister, then clouded with confusion and displeasure when he saw me. Clara, he boomed, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. What is the meaning of this? Your mother said you wouldn't be coming. Before I could answer, Mr. Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Bank and a man my father deeply admired, rushed forward, his hand extended, not to my father, but to me. Ms. Vance. Clara. What a wonderful surprise, he exclaimed, his face alight with genuine pleasure. I had no idea you were Arthur's daughter. Arthur, you sly dog, you never told us you were related to the most sought-after designer in the Pacific Northwest. My father blinked, utterly bewildered. Designer? What are you talking about? My daughter is a gardener. Sterling laughed, a hearty, booming sound. A gardener? Arthur, your daughter is the visionary behind Viridian Sanctuaries. She owns the glass wood. My wife and I have been on the waiting list for a membership at your coastal retreat for over a year. We've been trying to get a meeting with you for months to discuss financing your next expansion." The color drained from my father's face. He sank back into his chair, his eyes fixed on me. It was the look of a man seeing a ghost, or perhaps seeing someone for the very first time. I walked over to him, placing the heavy terrarium on the table in front of him. The string quartet seemed to falter for a moment, and a pocket of silence expanded around our table. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said softly. He stared at the ghost orchid, its spectral white petals glowing in the soft light. He didn't seem to understand. Sophie finally found her voice, a high, thin whisper. "The building. Mark's real estate company has been trying to get the leasing contract for this building for 2 years. They kept getting rejected." She looked at me, her eyes wide with a dawning, horrified comprehension. "It was you. You rejected them." "My property management division handles all leasing inquiries," I said quietly, not looking at her. "They have very high ethical standards." Mark, her fiancé, had gone pale. He was staring at his phone, his thumb swiping frantically. I could guess what he was looking for. Information on Viridian sanctuaries. On me. The piranha had just realized he was swimming in an ocean, and I was the tide. My mother, meanwhile, had begun a frantic, whispered campaign of revisionist history with Mrs. Pennington. "We always knew, of course," I heard her say. "Clara has always been so creative, so independent. We gave her the space to follow her passions, you know. We're just so proud." The lies were so transparent, so desperate, they were almost pitiful. I focused on my father. His hand, a hand I knew from my childhood, a hand that had taught me to tie my shoes and checked my math homework, trembled as it reached out to touch the glass of the terrarium. "All this time," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. "We thought. We said. You said I was a glorified waitress," I finished for him, quoting the words he had hurled at me the day I'd left the family firm, the words that had been branded onto my memory. "You said there was no honor in a life in the dirt." I looked around the atrium, at the towering dogwood tree, at the walls breathing with life, at the floor beneath my feet made of stone pulled from a local riverbed. "It turns out," I said, my voice just for him, "that a life in the dirt can build things you can't even imagine." I straightened up, my heart feeling strangely light, as if I'd finally set down a burden I hadn't realized I was carrying. "Please," I said, my voice carrying to the surrounding tables where guests were now shamelessly listening. "Enjoy the party. Everything tonight is on the house." "My house?" I turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at my stunned family. "Oh, and Sophie," I said, unable to resist one small twist of the knife, not out of malice, but out of a need for the simple, unvarnished truth. "That dress you're wearing. It's a beautiful design. The original, by a young artist I'm sponsoring, will be unveiled in her spring collection next month." "I'm glad you like the prototype so much." Her face crumpled. The last vestige of her superiority, the armor of her expensive taste, had been stripped away, revealing it to be a cheap imitation. I didn't wait to see the fallout. I turned and walked away, not to the exit, but towards the private elevator that led to my office, to my sanctuary within the sanctuary. The hours that followed were a blur of muted activity from my perch above the party. Through my glass floor, I watched the slow, painful recalibration of my family's universe. I saw Sophie's fiancé, Mark, have a brief, tense conversation with her before walking out of the party, and out of her life. I saw Sophie herself, sitting alone, her face in her hands. I saw my mother, moving from guest to guest, her smile a brittle, painted-on thing, her laughter too loud. And I saw my father. He didn't move from his chair for nearly an hour. He just sat there, staring at the terrarium, occasionally reaching out to touch the glass, as if trying to understand the world contained within it. The other guests, after their initial shock, gave the family a wide berth, whispering among themselves. The celebration of Arthur Thompson's life had become awake for the lies they had all lived by. As the party thinned out and the string quartet packed their instruments, Elias buzzed my office. "Your father is asking to see you, Clara. He's in the atrium, by the dogwood." "Thank you, Elias." "Send him in." A few moments later, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and my father stepped into my office. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, his shoulders slumped, the formidable force of his personality diminished. He walked slowly, looking around at the sketches on the walls, the shelves of botanical reference books, the soft, warm light. He stopped in front of my desk and looked down through the glass floor at the now empty atrium below. I had them bring it up, he said, his voice raspy. He gestured to the corner, where two of my staff had carefully placed the terrarium. The ghost orchids seemed to glow in the dim light. We stood in silence for a long time, a silence that felt different from all the angry, resentful silences that had defined our relationship for years. This was a silence of exhaustion, of emptiness, of a space being cleared. Those buildings out there, he said finally, gesturing to the city lights twinkling through the rain-streaked windows. You see them from here? Yes, I said. The Thompson and Daughter building, he said, his voice cracking on the name. Our firm. We're a tenant. Are we? I nodded slowly. Your lease came up for renewal 3 months ago. You're on the 7th floor of the Hemlock building. I own it. He closed his eyes, a tremor running through him. I was so proud of that lease. I thought Sophie had negotiated such a good deal. She did, I said, and it was the truth. I told my property manager to give her a family rate. He opened his eyes, and they were wet with unshed tears. Why, Clara? Why didn't you ever tell us? Why did you let us treat you like you were nothing? I took a deep breath, the scent of damp earth and jasmine filling my lungs. I thought of all the years of quiet holidays, of condescending questions and pitying looks. I thought of the burning shame and the stubborn pride that had kept me silent. Because you wouldn't have listened, I said, my voice gentle but firm. You didn't respect the dream, Dad. You only respect the balance sheet. When I tried to tell you about my passion, you heard failure. When I tried to show you my vision, you saw dirt. I knew, even then, that the only language you would ever understand was the one you taught me, success. But by the time I had enough of it to make you listen, I didn't need you to anymore. He flinched, but he didn't argue. He just nodded, accepting the truth of it. I was afraid for you, he whispered. I wanted you to have a secure life. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Can you forgive me? Can your mother and sister, can we ever be forgiven? I walked over to the terrarium and placed my hand on the cool glass, next to where his had been. I thought about the word. Forgiveness. It felt too simple, a neat bow on a messy, tangled story. Forgiveness was for them. It was about absolving their guilt. What I needed was for myself. Forgiveness isn't the point, Dad, I said, turning to face him. It's about respect. You spent my entire adult life disrespecting my choices, my passion, my intelligence. You built a family narrative around my failure because it was easier than admitting your own definition of success might be too narrow. The damage from that, it doesn't just go away because you've seen the price tag on my life's work. I looked out at the city, then back at him. What happens now isn't about forgiveness. It's about you and Mom and Sophie deciding what kind of people you want to be. Do you want to be the kind of people who only value someone when they find out they're rich? Or can you learn to see the person, not the property? I left the question hanging in the air between us. I didn't need an answer from him tonight. The answer would come in his actions over the coming months and years, or it wouldn't come at all. There's a key, I said, pointing to the base of the terrarium. It's for a cabin on the coast. It's quiet there. A good place to think. He nodded, unable to speak. I walked to the elevator. My work here was done. Not my work as a CEO, but my work as a daughter trying to find her own footing on ground that constantly shifted beneath her. As the elevator doors slid shut, I saw him one last time, a solitary figure standing in the middle of my office, in the heart of my world, finally seeing it and me for what we truly were. I didn't feel triumph or anger or even pity. I just felt a profound, quiet sense of peace. The walls I had built to protect myself were no longer necessary. I could stand in the rain, unprotected, and just let it fall. I was home.